You've spent your whole life being told you just need to try harder, focus better, be more organized, stop forgetting things, stop leaving tasks half-finished, stop getting distracted, stop being so much. And somewhere along the way, you stopped blaming the situation and started blaming yourself. Because if everyone else can do this stuff and you can't, the problem must be you. And then, at 25 or 32 or 41, someone says the letters, and your entire life rearranges itself into something you can finally understand. The number of adults being diagnosed with ADHD for the first time has surged dramatically in the last few years, and the explanation isn't that people are faking it, or that diagnosis has become trendy, or that everyone who struggles with focus now wants a label. The explanation is simpler and more troubling. The diagnostic criteria used for decades were built almost entirely around hyperactive boys. They described what ADHD looks like in one specific presentation, in one specific demographic. For everyone else, the symptoms looked different, and different meant invisible. Here's what ADHD actually is at the neurological level. Not a failure of willpower, not a character flaw, not what happens when someone doesn't try hard enough. It's a dopamine regulation problem. Your brain's ability to release dopamine consistently, particularly in response to routine or low stimulation tasks, is impaired. Dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical, it's the chemical your brain uses to motivate itself toward things that matter, to sustain attention on tasks that aren't immediately rewarding, to fire the start signal on things you know you need to do. Without consistent dopamine signaling, none of those processes work reliably. Not because you don't care, because the neurological mechanism that was supposed to help you sustain caring isn't doing its job. This is why ADHD doesn't look like someone who can't pay attention to anything. It looks like someone who can hyper-focus for 6 hours on something interesting and can't start a 10-minute admin task they've been putting off for 3 weeks. The system isn't broken across the board, it just doesn't work without dopamine. And routine, obligation, and tasks without immediate reward simply don't generate enough of it. For women and girls especially, the missed diagnosis story is more complicated. Research shows that girls with ADHD develop what psychologists call masking much earlier. They learn to compensate for their symptoms through enormous effort, social imitation, and rigid self-discipline that makes their struggles invisible to the adults around them. They look like they're managing. They're actually exhausting themselves managing. And because nobody sees the compensation, nobody identifies the problem. They arrive in adulthood carrying decades of unexplained exhaustion, chronic self-criticism, and the specific kind of shame that comes from knowing you're trying harder than everyone around you for results that are somehow still not as good. One of the least discussed features of ADHD is something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, a neurologically based emotional response where perceived criticism or rejection lands with disproportionate intensity. Not because the person is oversensitive, because their nervous system amplifies that signal in a way that is genuinely beyond their control. Entire relationship patterns, career choices, and social strategies are built around avoiding this specific feeling, and most people who have it don't know it has a name. When adults receive a late ADHD diagnosis, there's a psychological process that researchers have started documenting, a specific kind of retrospective reframing. The failed deadlines, the forgotten appointments, the job that never got finished, the relationship where they were told they were too much. It doesn't become okay, but it becomes explicable. And for many people, explicable is the first form of relief they've ever had. Not because the label fixes anything, because after a lifetime of being told the problem was effort, knowing the problem was neurological is the first honest account of what actually happened to them. You were never lazy. You were never careless. You were working with a brain that was genuinely working differently, in a system that only recognized one way of working at all.